I know, we've had that caption a million times. Now, Hillary Clinton continues to blame other things for her loss to Donald Trump in 2016. In fact, in a Wednesday interview with Time Brand's executive Alan Murray, she finally admits that maybe her economic policies were a little bit to blame for her loss. Oh my God. Is she saying that her centrist policies were not something that gets people excited about voting in a presidential election against somebody who is running as a faux populist on the right? Well, let's get to that quote. She said, quote, "It is hard to know, but I mean if you're in the Iowa caucuses and 41% of Democrats are socialists or self-described socialists, and I'm asked, are you a capitalist? And I say, yes, I am. But with appropriate regulation and appropriate accountability. You know, that probably gets lost in the, oh my gosh, she's a capitalist." Look, man, it's like, she's there, but she's not. Like, she's not quite there. So close. Look, there was something, okay, so you want to talk about our economic policies. Wonderful. Let's talk about the economic policies, right? So basically, she's a holdover from President Obama. Basically the same kinds of policies, a little bit of a tiny raise in the minimum wage. Yes, it does help people. But basically more, Wall Street, a little bit of deregulation in there, but maybe a little bit of regulation somewhere else, some piecemeal regulation here and there, or et cetera, right? Now, compared to Republicans and their economic policies, well, look, we've been living under Donald Trump, and I can say with absolute 100% certainty that her policies, which were a continuation of President Obama's policies, were much better. Yeah, I know. I said it, right? That's because what we're looking at is no change versus a garbage fire. Donald Trump and the Republican Party have basically taken a match to the economy and we're like, there you go. Look, here we have a $1.9 trillion hole in the deficit. And here's what they're going to do. Republicans are now saying, you know what we got to do to close that deficit? We're going to have to cut your Medicare. We're going to have to cut your food stamps. You're going to have to cut your Social Security. We're going to have to cut all those quote-unquote entitlement programs. So, yeah, look, if you don't want to do a comparison, then what was the status quo before is better than the status quo now. It's just, I guess, it's economic ruin at a slower pace instead of hitting the gas and saying, seatbelts are for commies. So that's what's going on here, right? Now, look, some policies she decided to try to go a little bit slightly to the left to meet Sanders sort of halfway in the center, right? Which, look, Bernie Sanders, they paint him as some sort of giant leftist, but really he's more center left than anything. Jeremy Corbyn is actually far more progressive than Bernie Sanders is. But when when we look at our context here, in the Overton window here in America, everybody's like, oh my God, Bernie Sanders is so radical, he's insane. No, he's not. He's actually center left, and he comes armed with good, workable policy, right? Now, the thing is, when Hillary Clinton started going his direction on some of the issues, one of the main problems that we have as progressives is that we didn't trust that she actually meant that, because she has a history of duplicity. And that's one of the big problems, right? Duplicity. Like, hey, you say one thing, but you do another. Yeah, you talk about, hey, let's go after income inequality, but you favor big banks who happen to exacerbate that economic inequality. So, look, those are the trust issue is obviously enormous, right? Now, on healthcare, for example, Medicare for all, that is the answer. That's the way that we need to go. Every other country has proven that has a Medicare for all system that is a superior healthcare system, not only in patient outcomes, but when it comes to spending as well. So we have all this publicly available data. We've got all these different countries that have done Medicare for all. that have done some sort of single-payer system, and they're wildly successful. We look at those and we think, why don't we have those? Hillary Clinton looks at those and says, never, ever going to happen, right? She fought against free college for all. Yeah, she did some sort of limited free college plan. That's what she was talking about. But she's like, I don't want free community college and free public university for everyone because I don't want Donald Trump's kids going to college. I remember that argument. But wait, what rich person puts their kids in public university? None that I would know of. Well, to be fair, I don't know any rich people, but most rich people tend to put their kids in a private university, in a private school. But anyway, and look, I don't even care. Yeah, so, okay, if we have free college for all, then am I going to be up in arms if somebody who is a little bit more well-to-do goes to a publicly funded university? No. No, I don't care. A right to an education for everybody, I believe, is a right. The right to a good, fair education that does not leave you in debt. I believe that's a right. Hillary Clinton obviously does not. So look, on policy, yes, she was center-right on policy. But she says, no, the problem is that I wasn't socialist enough. So understand that this is more red baiting, right? And here's the thing. She says that she comes from that framing because, look, she's entrenched in that system. The system that made her family and her fabulously wealthy and actually gave her an immeasurable amount of power inside the DNC and inside the Democratic Party. She and her family were power brokers. They were major, major, major figures, right? So she wasn't going to go against that system. That's the system right now that's been crushing so many people, so many regular Americans, so many working people. And she wasn't going to do anything to challenge that system. So that's why a lot of people, even the, so-called socialists, whatever, especially the so-called socialists, which are actually more democratic socialists or social democrats along the lines of Bernie Sanders, because she doesn't use that description properly. She doesn't properly address what the people who supported Bernie actually are, progressives. She thinks, oh no, they're hardcore leftist socialists. And I'm not one of those. I'm a capitalist. So, but social democracy is along the lines of FDR, who brought us the most popular programs in American existence. But anyway, I feel like I'm rambling. But look, there was going to be absolutely no change or very little change under Hillary Clinton. Just more status quo. And so, but in her words, no, it's the fact that I was a capitalist, that I was a, normal American capitalism. That's why I was rejected by young people. In fact, she actually addressed this. She said, quote, earlier at the Shared Value Leadership Summit in New York, Clinton has said the reputation of capitalism is pretty much in tatters for young people, according to Fortune magazine. Well, look, there's a reason for that. It's because capitalism, okay, it's actually not because capitalism is failing. I know Jimmy Dore, he's like, capitalism is failing. I actually don't agree with that. You know why? Because I think that everything that's going on with our system and all the failings inside of capitalism are by design. This is not a bug, it's a feature. Money flows to the top. It flows to the owners of capital who exploit workers for low wages. How do they get more money at the top? They starve it from the bottom. They take it from the bottom. So when they depress wages or when they keep wages artificially low, well, that helps them. They're not at all worried about workers. When they make sure that their taxes are low, when they make sure that they have less regulation, that helps them. And look, most of their money, and for a consumer economy, this is like sort of the death spiral for a consumer economy, is to have all that money and that flow to the top and to have so much income inequality. Well, they're not worried about that because all their money is tied up in the Wall Street slot machine, where they make money from money. They make money from speculation about things that aren't actually there, that don't actually exist. You make money from money. And so they're not worried about real world things. They're just reinvesting. I mean, look, one of the big problems with the Trump tax cuts, and there are so many that I've laid out on the show, but one of the big problems is that they took that money that they saved, and guess what? They went and basically repurchased their own stock. And that, of course, helps their stock value go up. It artificially inflates the value of their company, who is not making more things. They're not more valuable. They haven't added more to the economy. No, all they did is they said, I'm going to pump money into my stock prices so that I make more money, so that it's more valuable to other people on Wall Street. But it's not more valuable. It's not more valuable at all. But that's the system that we have. And look, the system itself encourages rigging of the rules to get an advantage over your competitors. And again, we allow that. And we also allow the bribing of elected officials. These are not bugs in the system. These are features of this system. And right now, our system is incredibly out of whack. And young people notice, they see that. And they're like, everything is so incredibly fucked up. And it has to do with greed. It has to do with money in politics. We grew up in the middle of a recession, and we see the system for what it is, right? And look, the system has been like this at least from the 70s, maybe even further before. But in the 70s and 80s, as this was starting to happen, as this downward, this great, transference of wealth, the great disparity was starting to begin. People were distracted by cheap credit, easy access to credit and credit cards. And so, we didn't really feel the pinch when our wages were getting stagnated, when our money was getting stolen out of our wallets. We didn't notice this at all because, you know what? I don't have the money. Why don't I just get a credit card, then I get a brand new color TV. But millennials, we see all that this is happening. And look, even back in the 70s and 80s, yes, you could actually still buy and afford a house on one income. Now, it's impossible to even afford an apartment on a minimum wage salary, even if you're working full time. So, our system is just, it's so incredibly messed up. And the level of consumerism that had started, during this great disparity in the 70s and 80s and continuing through the 90s and things like that, blinded so many people to it. But millennials, look, we're not buying the current system, a lot of us. But iPhones, you guys got iPhones. What are you talking about? Those are communications devices that also allow everybody to stay connected. They're great tools for activism. Social media is a great tool for activism and connecting to other people. You have cameras that can catch pretty much any kind of terrible action that you want on camera, protests and police doing terrible things. These are an incredible tool. So it's not just about Instagramming your lunch, which, yes, a lot of people do, and I don't quite understand that. But nonetheless, these are important tools. So, yes, it is important to have one because it can do so much. But anyway, now look, Hillary Clinton, back on her for a moment and her defense of the system. Look, would she have done some regulation? Yeah, maybe a little bit, right? She would have done it here and there, just like President Obama, but she wouldn't have actually solved the underlying problems with the system. Would have done something akin to Dodd-Frank, maybe something close to it or a little bit less, or it strengthened Dodd-Frank instead of weakened it, like we have under Trump, which was already weak before. But she would have called it historic. Oh, look at this historic Wall Street reform. Now, that would have only slowed down the decline in our system. The real way to fix our system is to get money out of politics. Money is the root of all evil. For example, you've got a profit motive in all these different things that shouldn't be there. There shouldn't be a profit motive in healthcare. There shouldn't be a profit motive in education. There shouldn't be a profit motive in infrastructure. These things should be public. Again, some of the most popular programs in America are public. You even have some places that right now are running public internet. And it's faster and it's more competitive. And in fact, these companies are like, you're too competitive. Well, we're going to have to shut you down because we're not going to be able to make as much of a profit. But wait, there are people, there are customers, there are consumers that are actually benefiting from faster, more reliable, cheaper internet. That's good for the people, but not so good for the giant corporations. So you have all these private systems that depend on keeping these things expensive and out of reach for so many Americans. And again, that's so true in healthcare. I recently read a story about where a woman got a cut on her ear, went to the emergency room, got an ice pack and an ace bandage, and got billed for $5,000. Just for going through the door and getting an ice pack and a bandage. $5,000 bill. That is our capitalist system right now. So that's the problem here, okay? And until you address that, and unless you plan to address that and show that you're willing to address that, nobody's going to trust you at all. So maybe, and here's some advice for Hillary Clinton, maybe instead of blaming the voters for not supporting a flawed system, a system that is flawed all the way to hell, that you should maybe listen to the people that you want to represent. But of course, remember that Hillary Clinton never wanted to go after the progressive vote. She wanted to try and court Republicans. So, and that is a gamble that she absolutely lost. So, look, maybe instead of trying to become a Republican, you should actually try being a real Democrat, like the people that you're supposed to represent. Hey everybody, thanks for watching this video. If you want to see more like this, please hit the subscribe button below. And if you want to support truly independent progressive media, please consider becoming a patron at patreon.com/TYTNation.